Howdy folks, Little John in the kitchen, and see from the start, we're brewing up a couple of extract brews today, and the reason, it's just part of the whole process of getting some extract brews out. You know, guys have been asking for look at some extracts and different bits and pieces, but the main thing I really want to focus on today is the time factor. People often quote time as the biggest reason they don't step up from a lower method of home brew into a higher method with more involvement, but ultimately better beer. They say they just haven't got time to do it. Doing a simple, pre-hopped extract kit is simple. It takes 20 minutes, and I get that. It is nice and quick, but you can do extracts without a lot of time. The other thing that people often worry about, and again use as a problem, is cost. So we're addressing both those issues today. So I'm knocking out two brews today based on these two tins: Cooper's light malt extract and the wheat malt extract. Now, I don't usually use the tins. I generally prefer using completely dry malt, but I did buy the tins and I was going to play. And some guys people like to use the tins. They find it easier. It's definitely easier to store than dry malt. So this is definitely an option that people use. So I'm going to be using these as the base. So I'm getting these just into a sink of warm water, it's soaking. So before we go any further, cheers and shout out to all the Patreons. Any of the new guys that have joined recently who may not have copped a bit of a welcome on directly on the channel. Kane Canuta is one. I'll stick your name over here. I can't top of my head. I think I've mentioned before. Anyway, I'll stick it in. The Patreons, guys, cheers. These extracts and stuff, these extract and kit beers and things, this is only possible because of the Patrons. This isn't part of my normal brewing, and it's not what I normally, it's not part of my process of getting beer for me to drink. So that support from you guys, for the fellas at home, is what keeps these things possible. So if you're interested in Patreon, hit the link down below in the description. Have a look, see what it's about. Subscribers, cheers for subscribing. It also helps as well. So rolling on, let's get into it. That's it. Two tins of brew there. I know, so you're just sitting there and going, hang on, what's he doing? Is he only doing one brew? No, I'm even doing two brews. And as I say, I've got into these extracts, to help out and get some more videos and more range for guys at home who are starting out or haven't been going real long or are looking to expand a little bit. As I said, they're not really for me, but at the moment the little brother is really enjoying this. He's getting himself a good whack of whack of beer, reasonably priced. So it's turning out all right. So as I said, time is the big thing we're looking at. The extract holds a lot of people back, and particularly all grain, and I'll get that. On all grain brew day, start to finish, it can run anywhere from 4 to 7 hours depending on the brew and your equipment and things. But extract can be nice and reasonably quick. Now, I'm talking well under an hour and a half, start to finish. Now, and just to keep a track of that, I started the timer on the phone, got the phone out, hit the timer, and then went about and started getting everything together for today's brew. Now obviously I'd sat down and worked out a recipe and things already, but I didn't have anything together. So 25 minutes ago, I started. And I went out and I got all the bits and pieces I needed. So the first thing I did was I got my equipment. Now, this is really the only equipment we're going to need today. And this, as I said, the cost effectiveness and the cheapness of extract brewing, or what you can do, for those guys who don't want to spend much money. So, just using my stovetop in the kitchen, no fancy equipment, 2 19 litre Big W pots to do these 2 batches. Okay? Now, granted, they're only going to be 17 litre batches, they won't be full 23 litre batches. So, you're falling a little bit short there, but that's a bit of a, yeah, that's what you give up a little bit for the ease and simplicity. By the same token, if you did these 2 together, there's 34 litres, you could have yourself a nice big batch. So, in exactly the same time it takes to do one brew, I'm going to get the 2 of them done. Okay, so technically, I'm getting 34 litres of beer in the same time it would take you to make 23 if you're using a bigger pot. Now, you can use a bigger pot if you want to go to full size on the stove. It does start getting a little bit hard though to boil anything much bigger than this. You can possibly push to a 30 litre stock pot. You may be able to boil enough for a bigger batch. That's something you could play around at home. I'm not going there. I'm either here or I'm on a 50 litre and I'm running on a big gas burner. So, 2 19 litre pots over here. Both of these pots have got 9 litres of water in them. And that's pretty much the extent of our hard work. That's what we've got to do. That's going to work up to our 17. So, we're just waiting for that to come up to a boil. And we can get lots of things happening. But we don't need it all the way to a boil initially. To see how we're travelling. We're up around, getting up around 70 degrees. So that's not too far off, another 5 minutes and that'll be ready to probably be boiling. So just going to have a quick talk about the recipes and a little bit on the development of them. Because if you do an extract, particularly extract, it can be a little bit hard to find recipes. Your hop-based kit is easy to find recipes, there's plenty out there. All grain, there's plenty. Getting just into extract can be a little bit difficult trying to find stuff. So you need to play around. So what I recommend for anybody, even for the kit brewers, if you're doing hopped extract, is Ian H's kit and extract spreadsheet. Now, I will put a link down the bottom, which I hope will work. Other than that, it's generally available on any of the Australian homebrew forums. You can find a link to it generally. It will be easy to find. Aussie Home Brewer on Facebook, Home Brewing Australia. I think both of those will have it sitting in their in the file section, nice and easy to find. Do a search. It's not hard to come across. AussieHomebrewer.com, Home Brewing Forum. Also, you'll find it on there quite easily. And you can probably just do a Google search, Ian H extract spreadsheet. You'll probably find a link to it without too much trouble. It's a really good bit of software, and it's based on using kits and just extracts. It has some minor limitations, but for the most part, it covers everything you need. You can work with it enough to get what you want. And what I've done today is knocked up 2 brews. This is the brew day sheet that it knocks up. And we're doing a Kolsch and an Australian Pale Ale. The Australian Pale Ale is going to be a Stone and Wood Pacific Ale type of thing. I've done the Pacific Ale not that long ago, late end of last year, but it was not really true to style. It was a little bit off. That was a beer I brewed more for my own sort of liking. This is going to be much closer to the real deal. So we have 2 recipes. Now, I will list the recipes down in the description for both of these, so don't worry too much about following along, because this is going to get potentially messy and a little bit hard to follow. Okay. So what I want to do with both of these is I want to add, it says on here, this sheet works out how much you need to add so you can get the best utilisation out of your hops. It says I need to add 1,067 grams of dry malt extract or 1,299 grams of liquid malt extract. Now that's to get me to an SG of 1040 with about 10 litres in the pot. So in that ballpark, because that's your best, that's a good number for hop utilisation. So, and the programming works around that number. So that's what we want to do. So we're getting close to a boil on these. So we'll pull the lids off. Now that back one's going to take a little bit longer because there's not as much power in that. That's alright, we can work with that. So we'll get our tin. I'm going to keep everything in the right order. Yep. So now these tins are 1.5 kilos, it wants 1.3 kilos, so we're not going to put it all in just at the moment. Now it does want it later on, but not right now. So I said, this has all happened within our time frame, and our tin has been soaking in hot water, so the extract is getting a bit softer and easier to work with. Got me clean stirring spoon. I've only got one. I'm going to go between brews. I'm not too worried about them over. Now, just get your water mixing while you're adding your extract in, because it's just going to go straight to the bottom. And if you're not stirring it around, you're easily going to scorch it on the bottom. So I've just left a little bit in the tin. I've possibly gone a little bit heavy there, but it's not going to make much difference at the end of the day. First one's in, and we'll keep him in the right place. As I said, obviously if you're doing your one brew at home, it's going to be a bit less. It's definitely not going to be as confusing as what we're getting here. But, so I said, second batch we're doing the Kolsch. And there you go, I fucked up already. Let's turn that around. I put the light malt into the first one, and it's not, I keep the, I'm working left to right, so left recipe, left pot, right recipe, right pot, and straight away I went in and I put the wrong one in the wrong pot. So, we just simply swap the recipes. That's all good. So, with our wheat in, same thing, make sure we mix him. Now, this is one thing you do need to watch when you're doing extract, is your wheat extract. Now, a lot of people just assume that this wheat extract is wheat extract. Yeah, I know, it makes sense. But the reality is, this is only 50% wheat. It's 50% normal malted barley, so it's 50% your light malt and 50% wheat. So And it's designed that way because if you want to make a wheat beer, you just use 2 tins of wheat and you've got 50-50, which gives you your standard mix for a wheat beer. 50% barley, 50% wheat. So that's why it comes like that. If you're getting the actual dry malt, the dry wheat malt is 100% wheat. So it's different. So be aware of that. If you're designing the recipe, that you're allowing for that. That if you're using dry, it's a higher percentage, so you get up with a higher percentage of wheat in your finished beer. So if you're only wanting, as an example, if you want 25% wheat in your beer, which is about what we're looking for with the with that Pacific Ale. If you're doing a full batch, you'd use 1 tin of light extract, 1 tin of the wheat, and that'll get you 25%. If you're using dry, then you need to go 75% dry light malt and only 25% of your dry wheat. Just keep that in mind if you're ever using it. And the same thing, if you're looking at recipes where people are using wheat, make sure you're checking which one it is, because that's going to make a difference. If you're using dry wheat and they're using a liquid, you're going to have twice as much wheat than what you're expecting, and that will affect your final end flavour. Okay, so right now I just need to leave these come to a boil and we can get some hops in. And this is where we're going to save ourselves a little bit of time. We're only going to boil for 40 minutes. We don't need to boil for 60. Now, they're not far off. I'm at 37.5 minutes. And these probably aren't, this probably is not real far off a boil. And again, like I said, if I was using the gas burner to do this, this would have been boiling by now, well and truly. It does take a bit longer on the stove. That's in the 90s. And that fella's about 10 degrees behind. That's all good. So I'm going to go now, quickly grab out my hops so we can get these going, and I'll be back. Okay, now this first one's come to a boil. That's our Kolsch, so I can get my hops weighed out. Righto, so Kolsch, we've got a 40-minute edition of Hallertau Mittlefruh. I think we've got quite as much Hallertau here as I would have liked, but it'll get the job done. So I'm looking for about 30 grams. Up there. Now at the same time, settle a little bit. So as I said, I'm just looking for a 40-minute boil on these hops. Because that gets me enough and still holds a little bit of flavour against the against the malt. And will work fine. 40 minutes is sort of that line where you start crossing from flavour into pure bitterness. I don't mind using it for that reason at 40, because you're getting a nice amount of bitterness, but you can, for most beers you'll still carry a little bit of that flavour. And I'm thinking in the Kolsch a nice little bit of extra flavour won't hurt. So hops are in. Alright, and let that do its thing. Now I'm going to just take it with those. Okay, so we're at 44 minutes since I started mucking about. And we've got the boil on. Now obviously if you're at home you wouldn't have been spending 20 minutes just yakking to me, you could have been doing something else while your water come to boil. So you haven't really spent much time at the moment, you've probably only really spent 20 minutes doing anything. And we're under a boil. Now, hopefully we're not too far off over the back here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to swing these around and change their spots. Because now this fella's going, you'll keep this boil a lot easier. I'm just going to come off of it. Alright, so happy with that. So that Kolsch is going to get the remainder of this Hallertau with 5 minutes to go, and we'll also get a little whack of some Czech Saaz at 10 minutes. Let's get on to the Pacific Ale. It's going to get a 40-minute edition of Galaxy. And it's not going to get a lot, it's going to get 8 grams. Now again, the Pacific Ale is more about the later hops. It's more about flavour, and we don't want to push the Galaxy too hard as a bittering hop. But at this level it's going to work fine. So wait for this to come to a boil now. Okay, and the second pot's now coming to boil. Keep an eye on this hot break. Now I have swapped the recipes around so they match up with the pots again now. So I'm keeping track of where I'm at. Obviously when you're at home, if you're only home and you're only doing one brew, you don't need to worry about that. But this is just a bit of an issue with this. Obviously we're doing the 2 pots. The second burner is not as powerful as the main one. I struggle to get to it's only just having a boil over the back there, but it's boiling enough to do the job. We're not far off here. As you see, if it wasn't for that hole I wouldn't have a problem. This isn't really threatening too much to go over, but it does emphasise why you do need a big pot when you're doing extracts. Particularly the dry does the same, and it gets a very, very big foam on it, way more than like you do if you're doing wall grain. But either way, you've got to really keep an eye on it. Yeah, and we'll do this for a couple of minutes before it finally decides it's done its thing. And this is just proteins boiling off. So it's a good thing, because this proteins are what's caused a lot of the haze in your beer. Stops your beer from being nice and clear. So it's good this stuff goes off. Some people will scoop this off, but I think I used to there at one point. I think it's just a waste of time. I don't think it really matters. It boils, it sort of all boils away. I don't think it makes any difference if you scoop it off or not. Yeah, the other pot there's none sitting on top, it's gone altogether. So I suppose the argument is it gets reabsorbed, you know, it goes back into the beer and stays there, or into the wort, but I don't think it's too much of an issue. It's getting about ready to fall back on itself, I think. Yep. That's it. Hot break done. So we'll get our hops into there. 8 grams of Galaxy. I'm just going to knock that heat back a little bit because that's going to boil a lot harder than the other one. And I'll tell you what, just to even timing up, I might even cut this boil back to 30 minutes. So we'll really trap this Galaxy right in the flavour zone. Get it before it starts making too much bitterness. Okay, so that's it. So right now I'm 56 minutes in. Okay, 57 minutes in. Both pots boiling. That's it. This fella's now been boiling for 15 minutes. We're coming up on 15 minutes already, so he's underway. So that's all good. So next hops, I said the 10-minute addition on the Kolsch, which is now going to be about 16 minutes away. So I'm going to grab myself a bite to eat. I'll wait with this a little bit of time to pass. And again, this is part of the thing with doing this extract. You're not here the whole time. A little bit of time, go and do something else. You know, so go and have some time with your kids or the missus, or run the mower over the back lawn while you're waiting for the hops to do their thing. It's not wasted time, you can use it. Anyway, back shortly. Okay, so we're just coming up on 10 minutes to go, and I'm just going to drop in half a World Clock tablet into each brew. Now I don't think it's necessarily needed, but it is in these instructions. We're following that. So we're coming on our 1 hour 14 minutes, which is mean we've got 10 minutes to go with this boil. So our Kolsch wants its next hop addition, which is going to be 10 minutes now. So that's not Hallertau. So we're looking for 8 grams of Czech Saaz. Back, and in she goes. Only 5 minutes will go for the remainder of the Mittlefruh with the Hallertau. 16 grams, which is spot on. Couldn't have planned that any better. And we'll also go for some Galaxy, so we'll grab another bowl. And I want 10 grams of Galaxy. That's 5-minute addition. So, it's ready to go. So, while we're waiting on that, I'll weigh up our dry malt Dextrose. As I said before, if you're brewing just a full batch and you were going for 23 litres, then you'd be looking at just using pretty much 2 tins. 2 extract tins at 23 litres is going to get you about 1042 gravity, which gets you about a 4.5% beer, 4.4 to 4.6 depending on your yeast attenuation. In the bottle after priming. So you don't really need to add anything to that if you don't want to. But because I'm pulling these back, I said, to 17 litres, I'm adding a mix of dry stuff, and also I want to get just a little bit more control over the exact finish on these beers. And this is where I said where dry malt really works well with extract, because you've got the option to play around. You've got light, amber, wheat, dark malt, and you can use them all sorts of different combinations to get different, get the flavour profiles that you want from the malt finish you're after. So what I've got on the Kolsch is I've got half a kilo of amber malt, 100 grams of light dry malt, and 200 grams of dextrose. Now, as always, just a bit of dextrose there to help combat the unfermentability of the malt, just to stop it from getting too sweet, and help keep a little bit of lightness in the body. The Pacific Ales, half a kilo of the amber, 200 grams of dry wheat, and again, so that's twice as much wheat per weight as the liquid. So that's going to boost our wheat content a little bit more. And 200 grams of dextrose in there as well. So, and I've also still got to add the remains of the tins back into these, but we'll do that at the end of the boil. So, I'm getting close to popping up here, another minute. I've lost my lunch. Having a little bit of brisket and rice. This was a bit of a trial. This one might end up on brew food at some point in the future. Just this full brisket with some rice. Not too bad. Now, I hope you can hear me alright over them fans. I know they get a bit loud on the video. We might cut them off. We might cut them off. Okay, so we're at 5 minutes to go. The remaining of our Hallertau Mittlefruh in the Kolsch. As I said, we pulled this Pacific Ale back a little bit, so it's not going to hurt. It's all about the Galaxy and the flavour, and it's not a real bitter beer. It's light, so I think it's going to hurt us. So we'll get our hops in there. And so that was 10 grams. Now we'll weigh up quickly another addition. Galaxy. Lord, that's going to be rock hard. I want to get a Flameout edition in there as well. And then this will also get a dry hop edition during the ferment. The Kolsch won't get anything more other than what it's got at the moment. So as they're finishing coming to a boil, we can look to get the remainder of our malt in here. Let's make sure we get the right one. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to put the remainder of the wheat malt into the Kolsch. Just, I think that'll give it a little bit of lightness, and I don't think it'll particularly hurt it. And we'll just use the remainder of the light malt in the Pacific Ale. I don't think it's going to hurt at all. Okay, that's effectively stopped our boil. It doesn't matter, those hops are still going to utilise the temps that are in there. And effectively, we're looking to stop this process anyway. No, got stuff on my finger now. I'll get the last of this in here. I've just cranked this Pacific Ale up to a full boil, just really getting it going, just to really rip in that last 5 minutes. So that's that. With the extract on the bench, yum yum. So we'll get our dry malts in now. Dump these in. Right, we don't need to boil the extract at this point. It's dry stuff. Just want to get it mixed in. For a minute to settle through. Alright, so drop the heat off the Kolsch. All in. No worries. That's it, 124, that's our 40-minute boil done. Now, so we need to get this cool, so I'm going to head out the garage where I've got a bunch of bottles of water in the freezer, getting cold, so we can get this starting to cool. Got my whacker bottles here. And the main reason this is because we want to get the temperature off, particularly the Kolsch. So, because we don't want the hops to keep utilising. Now, that's our last Galaxy, that's our Flameout addition into the Pacific Ale. And I'm happy to just give that a stir and let it sit for a minute. So, that's it. All we want to do at the moment is just get this temperature down below hop utilisation, which is sort of low 70s. Let's get my mum in there to keep an eye on it. because we don't want to keep extracting any bitterness out of those hops. Let's drop them down 80-ish. So that's down around 70. Alright, so let's stop that utilisation. Now I'm going to get that pot off the heat of the stove though, just so it can start cooling a bit. Alright, and now we'll do the same with this fella. And I said, this will just lock in the hop flavour. So we do this instead of having to carry this out into a water bath or in a tub of water and use that as cooling, or to use some sort of immersion chiller or something like that. This is going to stop us from needing an additional piece of equipment. If you were doing this at home and just doing a single batch, then you could get another bottle or two of water into this and cool it to get the temperature down. It's only just on that 70 degrees. It probably wouldn't hurt to be another 10 degrees cooler initially, but this is going to do pretty good. And considering it was only a 40-minute addition in the first place, and that was sort of part of that reason, was to allow for this end process, so when it pushes up a little bit more, it won't hurt. Because the reality is those bittering hops are only going to be 1 or 2 IBU difference by doing it this way at worst. So it's not going to have any negative impact on your final beer. You won't even notice it. Alright, so they're done. So right now, we're at 1 hour 29.5 minutes. So essentially, you can take your pot right now, dump it into your fermenter, top it up, and get it in your ferment fridge, and allow it to cool down to ferment temperature, and then pitch your yeast, later on in a few hours' time. But that is going to leave you a little bit of crud in the bottom in your fermenter. So what I'm going to do, as I said, that's your hour and a half pretty much done. But what I'm going to do with these, because I'm not in a rush and I don't have to have it done in an hour and a half, doesn't really matter. I'm going to let both brews just sit here and cool and settle. Let all this stuff drop out, all the hops, any proteins that are in there. Just let them drop out and let these cool a little bit by themselves. Right, they're both sitting on 70 degrees, so they're under that 72 where the hop utilisation stops. So there's no real utilisation coming from the hops, and anything that is coming from the hops at the moment is just going to be a little bit of flavour and some aroma, so it's not going to add any extra bitterness. So they're right where I want them. I'm really happy with that. Okay, so that's it. Just going to wait for that now, let it cool a little bit, let it drop out. So I'll probably give it about half an hour or so. I'll just do a quick clean up, get the fermenters out, and we'll come back and have a look when we're get them into the fermenters, and we'll get some final numbers on gravity, and I'll talk about what yeast I'm putting on these. Alright, we're looking get a bit of a transfer happening here. There's been a bit of cooling going on here, not a real, this is still sitting in the low 50s. Most of the crup's dropped out of it, so we can transfer it over now. I've still got one bottle for each in the freezer, and it's started icing up, so it's nice and cold. So sanitized fermenter. Look at the water I need to start with. Top that bottle up. Might as well make use of that bit of ice that was in there. Now, we'll bring this over and pour it as best I can into the fermenter without losing any, without stirring up too much of the hot crud that's sort of settled to the bottom. Well, try not to pour it all over the bench. Not really the best height for doing this, but anyway. And so whack it. Just a little hot crud there at the bottom now, so leave that behind. So that's got me to 10, there's 13 litres there. So I said, we're looking for 17. So I'll give this a bit of a fresh as we go on. Now, so this is going to be above pitching temp. I said before, you can do other things while you've got your brew on, so you're not killing just your hour and a half or so. Been out cleaning the pool, she's a bit of a muck all over me. That's pretty happy about that. But, look at this. Well, right now, all I'm doing now is just topping these up. So this is the energies so I don't get it mixed up. About 17 litres. So that's good. Now, so this is going to be still too warm to pitch. Mix now, and I'll take it out the garage and get it in the fridge, so it'll start cooling down. Like I said, so before bedtime tonight I'll be able to pitch yeast on it. So I'm going to do the same thing as this with the Kolsch, get it out there cooling down. I'll get out there, I'll get some hydro samples, get them cooled, we'll have a look at gravities, and we'll talk about the yeast. Righto. Both of these are cooling, they're still just a little bit warm. I end up not getting them into the fridge. I'm a bit concerned about the shelf actually top shelf taking the full weight of this. I normally only put the little fermenter on there, so I've just left them both out for the moment. Looks like they're sitting on about 28 degrees, so I'm going to give them another couple of hours before I pitch the yeast. I'll just do it before I go to bed. That's all good. But I've got a sample off each, and we'll get a gravity reading. Looks about 1042. On the Pacific Ale. Which is actually a bit below where I was targeting. Oh, that's alright. Okay. Tastes alright. Not a big hop present there, which is fine. So it's going to be a lot of dry hop that's really going to push that now. Take the Kolsch, which is cleared up reasonably nicely. Let's see where she's sitting. That's sort of sitting on 1040. So they're both 5 points down on where I was looking for, so they're possibly just a fraction over volume, but so don't know exactly where that's come from. Okay, that should be pretty straightforward, but that's out by that far. So that's no real biggie. We'll just leave it at that. It's not going to make too much difference. Still going to come out in a reasonable finish, so that's all good. So that's where they are. So I'm going to pitch yeast tonight. So what we're talking, yeast. So the Pacific Ale's just going to get some Nottingham. Let's go 1 pack dry straight on that. And the Kolsch is going to get Kolsch yeast, the Lallemand Brew Premium. So I haven't used this one before, the Kolsch, so we'll see how that goes. Now both of these will work quite happily in the sort of mid to higher teens. Garage has been sitting in that sort of range fairly steadily the last sort of weeks, so, and I think the weather's going to hold much the same. It's currently sitting on 22 in here at the moment, but it has been quite a bit warmer today, and the temperature's going to drop off overnight and settle back down. So I'm pretty happy to just leave these out. Actually, I may do the Pacific just on the bench at ambient. That's going to handle that a bit better, and I think the Kolsch I'll actually stick that in the fridge. I might stick that. I'll get that in temperature control, and I won't do it on about 19 degrees. So I'll stick that on here. Yeah. So I'll stick that in the fridge now. not going to run with the tea towel that long. I'll put some Glad wrap on that. This fermenter hasn't got a lid, so that'll be all good. So we'll run him at full temp so give these yeast its best chance to do what it wants to do. Tasted nice and clean, so happy with that. So that's there anyway. So the original estimate of hour and a half was a little bit off. Obviously there needed to be time for the cooling to happen, but the main thing was that the process itself is not as long as people sort of think it's going to be, and there's big chunks where you're not really doing anything. It's essentially it's sort of 3 small 10-15 minute blocks of time when you're making things happen. The rest of it you can spread out over an afternoon sort of thing. So it's not a process that's limiting as much as, say, like I said, the all grain is, where you do have to, you know, spend more time. It's similar but bigger chunks of time. So if you are thinking about it, you know, stepping up from just plain kits and pay a little bit extra, you know, maybe have a look at it, have a go at it. You've probably got a $20, you know, Big W pot already sitting around with the brewery with your kits. If not, go and buy one, $20. Then you can knock out, yeah, best part of a full batch of beer. And I said, the reality is you could play around and you could knock out a full batch if you really wanted to. You just do the original in the pot, just a little bit higher gravity. And just add extra malt. You're still going to get, you can still get there. Process is still the same. Having that same amount, having that 1040 wort initially for getting your hops in. Yeah, you're just squeezing that recipe down a little bit initially. Get your gravity right for your hot boil. Get that done, and then, you know, fluff it out with malt and sugars and your water to get the volume you want. So no reason why you can't do a full size batch on the stovetop with a $20 pot, and realistically nothing else. No other equipment outlay other than your fermenters that, you know, that you've already got. So that's me done. 2 brews, 1 stovetop, minimal equipment. You got any questions, any comments, stick them down the bottom. If you haven't subscribed, hit the subscribe button, come along. If you like what's going on, hit the like button as well. Patreons, as always, again, cheers. Nevin Rowe, if you're still watching, mate, cheers. I couldn't think your name earlier. I've checked it. I don't know if we've had a direct shout out or not, but you have now. So if you're interested in being a Patreon, send us about. The link's down there on the bottom as well. But that's it. Little John, I'm done. So until I see you again, we're drinking beer, talking beer, or brewing beer. Good brewing.